everybody. Welcome to Latinas Chat Media, the Brunch. I got to look at my phone and not. We thank you for bearing with us while we have some technical issues. Blab switched up something on us because we didn't have any of these problems when we came on last month.
Yep.
Linda, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you? Can you hear me? It's the connection.
Yeah, maybe.
Like there's delay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
and
so.
I don't hear you as well as I hear Siri.
Okay.
That could maybe because it's the phone too.
Okay.
The microphone on the phone.
Yeah, I'm unlocked. Let me unlock the seat.
Okay.
But Maria has to be on. I don't see her.
Yeah, I don't see her at all. I just emailed to see if she had any issues trying to get on.
We'll keep looking out for her. Let's get started. Got some folks following us. And
yeah.
Hi, Monique. Thank you for bearing with us. We hope the conversation
is worth the wait.
Worth the wait. Yeah. Let's get right into it. You know, the Nina Simone movie has a release date of next month. And since Zoe has been casted, from the moment it was announced that she was playing Nina Simone, there has been a lot of debate and controversy. And I know that some people feel like, well, more can be said about this that hasn't been said already. But I really wanted us to discuss this. We've been discussing it in our own, social media streams, but I wanted us to have a conversation about it publicly and share our viewpoints because we are Latinas. We are progressive Latinas, and we are Latinas in media and culture. And the online space is still very much in the African-American white binary. And I think because Zoe being an Afro-Latina, I think it's important for our voices on this to be heard and for us to have this conversation publicly and to invite people in. So thank you, because I know there was one more could be said, but I think we need to say what we were saying for the folks who are following us.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Want to start us off? Because I got a lot to say. You go first.
Siri, take it.
Okay. So when this sort of like 2 years ago, I guess it was, when some pictures started surfacing that she was filming the movie, I had a big struggle with it. I was like, this is not good casting at all. And I was very sensitive to the fact that, Black women in Hollywood are being whitewashed, or just even Black stories or Black actors and so forth. And, we'll get into why having a Latina and that actress could be perceived as a form of whitewashing for the African-American community, I'm sure. But, my biggest issue was, I feel like I have a personal connection to Nina Simone. I've been listening to her music since I was a young kid. There's something that she does when she sings and when she plays that is really special. And so my biggest concern was, look, if Zoe Saldana won that role out of however many actresses were cast, and if she can sing it, and if she can really bring that feeling back, then it was good casting, right? But unfortunately at the time, there was no, we really didn't know if she was going to be singing. I'm not really a fan of biopics where they dub the original person's voice over the actor. So I wasn't sure where it was going to go on that end. And then I was just kind of like, when I started seeing some of the feedback, was questioning, where's all this coming from when Zoe Saldana has played Black characters pretty much her entire career, right? So nobody cared when she played a Black actress in Who's Knocking, the movie with
American actress.
Say what?
Character.
I can't hear you.
Let's be specific.
Oh, sorry.
Played African-American characters.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. So
who she plays, she's Black.
Right. So she, right.
Whatever.
Right.
Played African-American.
Thank you. So she's been playing African-American women in movies for the majority of her career that I know of the things that I've seen. I have not seen every one of her movies. I do know that she played Colombiana, and that was an interesting one too, because the Colombian community came out and was like, why couldn't they find a Colombian actress to play in that role? right? So, so then there's also that level of this conversation of, do actors have to play only what they are? I don't know, right? Can a Dominican woman play a Colombian woman? Can a Puerto Rican woman play a Mexican woman, right? So, so there's sort of that level of the conversation too.
That's making a big assumption too, that Dominican or Puerto Rican or Cuban fits that Dominican Cuban role.
Right.
You can grow up totally in the white suburbs and have no connection.
Right.
So it's a big, assumption.
It is true, because and we have to recognize that all groups have their own nuances, so people may be able to or may not be able to really understand or integrate or get into those roles. I heard a ding. I don't know if somebody's coming on. So that's sort of where I was at in the beginning, and I feel, and it's really interesting because as I've been watching this play out, I've noticed a lot of people writing things like, I don't think she's a good fit for the role, but, and then all this other stuff, right? So I don't know if that's like a justification or like people need to preface the conversation.
Other stuffs, you spell it out.
Well, it all goes into the question of, should this Afro-Latina be playing this Black actress, right? And like we said before, this Afro-Latina has been playing Black characters, African-American characters, pretty much all of her career. So why this is a lot of the question that I have. Is it because it's Nina? Is it because of the makeup that she had to wear, which, a lot of people, including myself, consider a form of blackface? Is this, is it that it's more, I don't know, I guess with social media, we have more access to this information, so people can be critical of it a lot faster, right? Maybe 10 years ago when she was in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, I guess it was the reboot of that original film, right? We weren't on social media in that way for there to be this great backlash. Maybe people didn't know her background at that point, so it wasn't an issue. But I think now everyone knows that she's Latina. She also has her own issues about, acknowledging or where she stands on her own Blackness that I think for some people has been troubling.
But is that something that's, confirmed? Has she said enough to make us say it's questionable?
I think that what people want is for her to be screaming from the mountaintops, I'm an Afro-Latina, and she does not do that. And that's my personal belief. I think that people have an expectation that if you're Afro-Latino, that you gotta say it, and she's never really said that she's an Afro-Latina. She says that she's a Latina. I have my own conflicts with that too, but I think that's the expectation, that she doesn't own her Blackness in the way that I think people want her to own her Blackness.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
Linda, you come in. I think it would be irrelevant if she did. That's just what I think. But Linda, why don't you jump in? But before you jump in, I want to read what Bori Vega has said, which is because I think she makes a point that we are considering here, and she saying that cultural context does matter. Does the actor have it? Whatever role being played, that's the question. That for Bori Vega is the question. So Linda, what you were going to say?
I agree. I think it's really hard. And as creators and people who have directed and cast projects, I would hate for somebody to come along and tell me that's not the person you should have, cast, or tell me what to do with my own project. I have a problem with that. But I understand why it's important. The issue is very specific. The colorism thing is very specific for this issue here. Because of the person that she's playing. So this might not apply to something that's very similar. You see?
Yeah.
I think that maybe they did see people. I can't imagine Mary J. Blige giving any real depth of a performance. I love her.
Right.
But I don't think she's an actress.
Right.
I don't think got the experience that Zoe has. Zoe has very intelligent and has world experience, and you see that in her performances. She doesn't bring this one-dimensional she brings a lot to a character. But I'll be honest with you, when I saw the trailer, I went, ew, what a horrible makeup job. And then I had to check myself, and then I said, well, is it that she's unattractive, or is that it's a horrible makeup job? I didn't know. I was so confused, and I didn't want to say anything until I really understood my own feelings about it.
Right.
I still don't know. I mean, I understand the issue, but I do believe it's very difficult to find the right actress for a part. And when you do find that actress, you know when they come in and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the person. It may not be perfect, but this is whatever essence they had, we need to get this story told. I don't know.
I think, okay, when there's a whole lot of stuff at play here, and it gets, there's so much, like there's the issue of Nina's iconography. There's the issue of Zoe's blackness and whether she claims it or not. There's the issue of bankability. When it was first announced a while ago that she was cast in this role, I immediately, I didn't feel comfortable with it. I was like, why Zoe? And then I was really thinking about, well, who at the time had the bankability that she has? Because Zoe's bankable. Zoe has name recognition. People know Saldana is. And you want to get a project off the ground, you need to cast someone who's going to help you raise money.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking for a Black woman with chops and name recognition and who's the right age, you know, but I have to admit, but I really felt uncomfortable because I'm like, but did they really find someone that they needed? Because you got to understand, when she was cast, this was before, Orange is the New Black. Before we knew about, Uzo, and before we knew about, before the young woman in Pariah, like here's what people got to understand. It's that we are no longer in a filmmaking context. Back in the day, and I sometimes feel like in a sense it was the good old days, back in the day, an independent project like this could get made with an unknown.
Right.
That was the point of indies. One of the points of indies. Indies enabled you to find new talent. Able to make a movie that didn't cost you a lot of money. If the person was right, it didn't matter if that person had no name recognition. If anything, that the success of that project actually catapulted their career. Right. Mainstream. We don't have that anymore. Now Sundance is full of A-list
actors, yeah.
For Oscar bait projects.
Yep.
So it gets even so if it's already hard to be a woman of color, especially a Black woman of a certain aesthetic, if it's already difficult, now it's even more difficult because you have all these A-listers now vying to be in these indie projects, lowering their salary demands because they're going for that Oscar bait and those daps. I'm a real,
right.
I may have been in that rom-com, but I'm a real actress. Right? So now, if you already had a hard time as a woman of color of a certain look, despite your talent getting roles, now to be a place where you could get roles, the indie world is no longer as accessible to you. So that said, I was uncomfortable with Zoe in the part, but I didn't really know why. But before I could even, like Linda, figure out where I stood, at the time when Zoe was casted, a lot of the pushback that I saw, I'm not saying it was all the pushback, but immediate visceral reaction that I saw was really fucking anti-Latino. And so I responded from that space.
Well, I think
I was defensive of Zoe, but now I think that and maybe this has to do with the way social media has grown. Maybe I'm following better people. You know, I'm starting to see more nuance in discussing her identity. Like now I'm seeing a lot of African-American people saying it's not about Zoe's chops.
Right.
She's a Black woman. Is she the right Black woman for this part? And so now I'm seeing a lot more nuance. And also after watching the Nina biopic, the documentary, what happened to Miss Simone, and understand her better and what she's about, then I can really say, like, I'm not gonna let the anti-Latino undercurrents derail me from what I know is right. And what I know right is that no, she shouldn't have been cast. If they had to put her in blackface, then she wasn't the right no matter her chops, no matter her visibility, no matter if they had to go to that extreme to put her in the role, you know, then
okay, let me ask you a question. Then who's at fault? Why is everybody coming after her?
Right. That
these
yes.
Like, there's a white, the screenwriter's white, the director.
Yes. There's a lot. So that's one of the things that what Linda just brought up is one of the issues that I have with the way this backlash has manifested itself, which is, you know, when white actors play Black or brown roles, right? A lot of the critique go to the filmmakers. However, in this case, all of the critique goes to to Zoe Saldana, as if this is her project. This is not her project. She is an actress on this project, right? There were people who came before her who put this thing together and who have defended what they put together adamantly, right? Against anybody who, you know, may have been critical to them. One of my issues at the very beginning was that no one on the project consulted with the family. And that to me is a little problematic, especially because there is family available, that they didn't reach out to the family or didn't feel or didn't get approval. You know, the writer director, if I remember correctly, from the first time that this came around, which was a couple of years ago, was very much like, well, this is the story I'm telling, right? So does she have to go to the family, or not to get permission per se, but even just to research, right? Nina Simone, her life, etc. So I am concerned that all of the criticism is against Zoe right now, and none of it is really hitting or reaching the writer director or any of the producers on the production. I think that is very telling to me. You know, and I think that, you know, I understand, especially on the first round, why so many people, it was almost like people came out in defense of Zoe, regardless of where they sit on the project, because it's like, oh my gosh, she's a Latina, she's being attacked, that we gotta like protect our sister, right?
That nasty tweet that went out, that nasty tweet from whatever, was it the estate?
Like keep her name out your mouth. And I was just like, whoa.
That's a little rough.
That's extremely rough. It's extremely rough, especially considering that, you know, again, she's not the owner of the project. She's you know, an actor on the project.
But is it a biopic?
It's a biopic.
It's a biopic because what I heard, it was a relationship between her and her manager.
Right.
And that's the story. And I also have a problem, like what you said, like, in addition to not consulting with the family when there's family here to be consulted. And I'm all for, I understand that when you do these biopics that you have to allow, even though they're based on true people and true events, that there has to be some creative license that has to be allowed for the story to be told, because what really matters is the emotional truth of the story. Right. I have a problem with the fact that they concocted a relationship that did not exist.
Right.
The person that they concocted the relationship is a real person. So like this isn't what's that movie with Looking for Marilyn or whatever?
Yes.
But they concocted a relationship with Marilyn with a fictional character. So in order to get at some emotional, whether they don't know, but I kind of get that, right? But here they are saying that Nina had a relationship with, I think, her manager, who apparently is a gay man, and and Nina was herself married and in a relationship that people would say was abuse. So I kind of felt, yeah, you don't do that. That you don't do. That's not. That is really, really disrespectful, sensational, and I don't even think if you got chops as a writer and a director, even freaking necessary to create a relationship that didn't exist to tell the story. Nina's life, everything that she has done, everything that the way she still matters, the way she's still enduring, doesn't need your little creative tweaking in that way. Her story doesn't require that.
Right.
So people, and look what you said, Linda. When I saw the trailer, I was like, I'm like,
it was bad.
It's too focused on her demons.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, a lot of biopics do that. And I noticed a lot of people of color do that too. Because when you watch the Johnny Cash movie, and we talked about this when we talked about...
I was just going to bring it up.
You watch the Johnny Cash movie, you get to see him rise before you see him fall.
Right.
Why is it that, and any Marilyn, you get to see what made her so compelling before her go off the rails. But when it comes to people of color, the trailers and the opening scene is always
about their
why they were so important, so that we can understand the depth of the loss to the community, to the people, to the artistic world. So like that beef with the Lavon movie, it opens with his drug addiction. Sanitize it. You don't have to pretend he wasn't a drug addict. But why you put that? Let's open with him performing and doing and his creativity.
Right.
But that's another situation.
And all these, what made him? Why is this person important enough for us to be watching a movie about their lives? But that before you start to talk about their mental illness and abuse issues and whatever. And I noticed that with people of color, they start off with the
or they start off in like destitute poverty, or like some like it's always this person, came from like either this really, really, they show you all this ugliness first. It happened with the Tina Turner movie. It happened with the Ray Charles movie, right? Any biopic, you're right. They're starting from this really dark, dark place. And why? We don't, that's how the stories are getting told, right? Who are the writers? I think, Linda, you wanted to add something?
One thing before, because I want to become by Forte Monique Phillips has said really that I think we could sink our teeth into. She says, well, our pain is what, I guess what she said, our pain is what's necessary to validate our humanity. If we don't have pain, they can't understand us outside of that context.
Wow. Yeah. But that's that narrative, right? Like, oh, the minorities, they struggle. And, it's if that's the only way for people to understand us, or I guess for the, I don't even really like to use the phrase mainstream, but is that if that's the only way for white people to understand us is through our pain, I don't know that totally sits right with me.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, that we can only view, right? It's sort of the same argument that people are making about why they don't want to watch slave movies anymore, right? Because this is the only way the stories get told. They only get told through this pain, or they only get told through these particular contexts. And why is that? Maybe because that's the only way that people want to see people of color, or that's the only thing that makes sense to them, or that they can remember. You know what I'm saying? So like I struggle with that. I
think too, though, like, my favorite word is evolution. I think it's an idea. Like, I think the pain is what introduces us to them, or the thing that they can connect with, a universal audience will connect with first. And then after we've seen enough of that, we then evolve into this other type of story, like this Nate Turner story is supposed to be it's more the rebellion. It's more fighting. And then you have that moment and everybody says, oh, why didn't we do this before? Because you can't do this until you've gone through this
other like cycle. Yeah.
Right. It's definitely something that maybe we need to change now.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
important. It's still very important. I never say that we should never do anything, because if it's done or said, it's because we needed to hear it. If we get tired of it, then that's because we've evolved and we want something else now.
Right.
So I believe everything that we hear is something we need.
I think that I appreciate that, Linda. Thank you for saying that, because I think that's and also we're storytelling, right? And without conflict, there's no story. So
without a bottom, there's no top.
Is what I would like to see is, again, let us see if the stories open with the things they had in their way and you see them triumph over that, if it's that pain. Like, for example, if you were to do a biopic about Richard Pryor's life, then you would talk, he had a lot of pain in his childhood, but he also had, was raised in a brothel,
There is a movie.
And he went through a lot. But if you see him overcoming that, like, so that pain and why not? And if we really want to talk about pain as a way of connecting, understanding, and also seeing the hero's journey, maybe we could talk about the pain of white supremacy. Talk about the pain of the racism and the sexism and the misogyny and the whatever that these, and the xenophobia, and let's talk about those pains too. But I wonder if we, even when we're making these movies about that center people of color, there's always a concern about getting a white audience. And I do think, whether it's conscious or not, there's this concern about making white people comfortable. And you don't make them comfortable, regardless of what their politics are, whether they liberal, progressive, conservative, racist, not racist, about it, not about it. There's always this overriding concern about making them comfortable, and the way you make them comfortable is you don't make them feel bad about white privilege. And so
well, that's changing. I honestly,
with too much, unless the story is set in a way that they can be removed from it. Oh yeah, that racism. But I didn't grow up in the South, in the Jim Crow South. I wasn't a white person in the Jim Crow South, so I can watch that, and I can watch that racism and feel distant from it, and feel and I'm okay watching that. But if you try to talk about a biopic of something that was very recent, or something that is still very, very relevant, and you wanted to call that out, that, I don't know. I don't know if they test, like, I don't know if this movie has tested. How did this movie do they showed it in Cannes, right? Or Cannes, how do we
Cannes.
How was it received?
The French.
I have no idea. I have no idea if anyone liked it.
Yeah, because we're not hearing that. So,
well, let's see.
Where I am right now, and I don't know if, Linda, if you have figured out even where you are, because I know you're still struggling. Where I am with this, and also, the other thing that I wanted to say was that, people coming for Zoe, it's a mixed bag because of the way she has talked or not talked about race in general, not just only her blackness, but race in general. And she's playing this person who was very, very aware race and care, and was a cultural activist, and put herself on the line politically. So then you have this actress who, when part of the acting process is about understanding who you're playing, and then she's made these comments around that shows that her racial politics are a little bit,
But let me ask you a question.
That said, I think it's kind of really weird for people to be mad at Zoe for one. It's probably a juicy ass role.
And let me ask you a question. Why is Zoe?
Simone, I'm like, can I?
Yeah, yeah.
But see, I want to go back to this, you know, you have to scream, I'm Afro-Latina, because I don't agree. Why is someone like Zoe getting those prime Hollywood roles and Gina Torres is not?
Boom. Boom.
I mean, you know, you really got to think about that. So maybe Zoe's worldview, and you know, I'm not making excuses because you know me, you know, I have a Puerto Rican flag on my chest. You know, I don't think you have to scream it to know that you're proud.
Right. And
I don't think you said anything anti.
I don't think that I think racial politics, she's one of those it's not I think she embraces her blackness. I think she has a very naive, uninformed understanding of what blackness means in this context. So
I don't think so. Smart.
Yeah.
I don't think she's not proud, but I also don't. But I think her understanding is a little superficial based on what I've heard her say.
Yeah.
But you can be naive and you can be whatever and still not be have a problem with who you are, but you may have not really understand racial identity politics.
I think it's a couple of things.
You underestimate. Yeah. I don't think Will Smith is not proud to be black, but I know that he said some shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, and there is an aspect of this that's very gendered because men can get away with this new black shit sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, and if they show they got some genius, they kind of get a little bit of a pass, but women do get written much harder around them.
I think a couple of things. I think because of the Afro-Latino movement to really like acknowledge and identify in a very public way Afro-Latinos and bring them into the center as opposed to the margins is part of the issue here. And that's why I think part of the reason why I think she's being criticized, because she's not out there saying, I'm an Afro-Latina. She's saying she's a Latina. Now, she and I guess, are like roughly the same age. In my growing up, nobody said Afro-Boricua. Nobody said Afro-Latino. We were always Puerto Rican, and that's the end of the story. And I have people, you know, and we all say the same thing, right? We got people in the family that are black. We got people in the family that are white. We got people in the family that are mixed, right? So in my growing up, you know, other than explaining to outsiders who I was because they kind of thought all Puerto Ricans were white, you know, internally within my family, within Puerto Rican people that I hung out with, we were never having to say, oh, I'm Afro-Puerto Rican or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. So if she grew up, and I don't know, I'm taking making a leap here, but if she grew up in that way, then I could totally understand why she's not necessarily saying all the time, I'm Afro-Latina. I personally have moved away from that, even saying that, because honestly, if you can look at me and not be sure, then that's your problem, not mine. I know who I am and what I am, you know? And so I think that's part of it. And I think that for some Afro-Latinos, it's very personal in that they're feeling erased. People are feeling erased from the conversation. They're feeling erased from, you know, different spaces. And so to claim it is to bring it into the center, right? So I think that's part of the criticism, at least the way that I'm reading it. But again, Zoe Saldana is not sitting in these, you know, critical race theory circles having this conversation, you know, to know like, oh, this is who I am and this is how I want to speak or whatever. She's never even been a part of those conversations. Like there was a short documentary, I think, with all Afro-Latinos that Gina Torres was a part of, and Tatiana Ali and Elvis Nolasco and all these folks talking about being Afro-Latino in Hollywood, right? She wasn't a part of that conversation. She wasn't on that little documentary. And the thing is, all Afro-Latinos have pretty much always played African Americans in their roles, because that is how Hollywood sees you if you come in a certain shade of brown, you know, like.
Well, I want to talk about this certain shade of brown because I have an issue with because I feel very in the middle. I'm not Afro-Latina.
But you, right.
You know, I'm not
right,
white.
Right.
I'm in the middle. But anyway, because I won't go around saying I'm Afro-Latina. But Gina Rodriguez is, there's this Madame Noir article last year that Gina Rodriguez and Selena Slava talk about being Afro-Latina.
Yes.
Is Gina Afro-Latina? And if she owns it, if that's, it's, I mean, like, see how it gets very complicated? Yeah. If you ask me, she's not Afro-Latina.
Right.
But maybe I should just shut up because I don't know what Afro-Latina is. You know,
she said in a commentary, I think it was something about her grandfather or someone is Afro-Latino, like a grandfather or a grandparent. And therefore she is Afro-Latina because she's got a grandfather who's who she identified as Afro-Latino. I don't know, you know. So yeah. However, is she going to have the same struggles as other Afro-Latinos in her career and in her life, right? Is she going to be that person that goes in for a Latino role and says, you're too Black for this role? Like, we can't, it's not going to work.
And that's why I give a lot of props to Zoe, because Zoe has been in some really amazing stuff. You know, she really is that, I would consider her A-list.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. I would.
Me too. Me too.
She's at least B+.
Sorry.
But and let's be real. Like, if she wasn't Black, she would be totally A-list. Eva Mendes looking Latina, or Gino looking Latina, she might be considered like Zoe. The reason why I say B+ is not because of her talent, it's because I think because of her Blackness. And she's gotten as far as she has because of the kind of Blackness. Because even though she is brown skinned, she still has very European features. And so that enables her to be in African American roles. And so but I feel that she has hit a certain ceiling despite her chops. And also, let's also talk about her body side, right? She's that Hollywood thin, right?
But she was a dancer.
Right, all of that. So she's Hollywood thin. She has body fina, you know, cheekbones, you know, very model-esque.
Right. Well, but that, and I
to make her exotic.
Right.
Hollywood likes their exotics. They want something to be different, but not too different.
Right.
But if she was fairer, then she would have been in Hitch. Right? Like so yeah, it's very, very complicated. It's very complicated. And again, it's like I kind of feel like the one thing that is not fair to Petite Caron is you got to understand why would she this was you got to know that when she got the script she was thinking this was a role of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? If people want to say like she should have turned it down. That's a hard that's a big thing to have asked of her. I'm not saying that maybe she shouldn't have. I'm just understand what you're asking.
I don't think that people I don't think that people really understand the life of an actor, in that what you're fighting for and what you're trying to do and what you hope to be able to do. I don't think people get that. They don't get that, for some actors, a role like this is like going for your PhD. They seem very different to people. And I guess that's because, entertainment, there's so much fluff about it. It can be extremely superficial, especially when we're talking Hollywood. And, there's even a distinction between Hollywood and theater, right? In terms of like what we respect and admire in acting, and what we see sort of as this like entertainment and all that kind of jazz. And I don't think that people see the point that you're making, Sophia, that for her, this might be that. This might be like, wow, this is challenging. This is, a story that's powerful, hopefully. We haven't seen it yet to know. This is a person who means a lot to a lot of people. So there's an honor, right, in playing that kind of role. And I don't think that people outside of the entertainment field really can understand or empathize with that part of it, right? Unfortunately for Zoe, I think there were just these other things outside of her control that people are picking apart, you know, like the blackface and the nose prosthetic and the skin darkening, right? Those are things that are outside of her control.
Well,
you know,
this is where her not having a very evolved understanding of racial identity politics,
right?
Yes, right? Because her wanting to do the part, I get that. It's just like, okay, but if you have some kind of racial consciousness,
right,
then you already say, okay, you are gonna ask who's directing this, who wrote this,
right?
You're going to when you get given that prosthetic nose, you're gonna go, what? You're gonna when that you know, I think this is what, so I think what she's most guilty of is ambition and naivete. You know,
no,
you know, guilty.
Well, but the thing is you can
ride with me for a second.
Yeah.
And naivete.
Yeah.
Because I could see Black African American women who might not have been actresses, who might not have had the hue, who might have needed prosthetics and wigs and whatever, getting this role and maybe saying, I shouldn't do this, if they have that racial consciousness. Mm-hmm. Just like I could see other African American women saying, no, I'm going to do this. This is the role of a lifetime. So that's,
I don't think you should turn down what you feel is a challenge and you believe strongly. If you fail, you fail and you try. But I don't know if I've ever said I'm not the right person when somebody's approached me with a job or an opportunity. I'm not sure. I could probably say, wow, there's probably better people maybe, but it's they came to you.
And you know, to her, they came to her because she has the visibility that they thought would help the movie get made, money, would get people to see it, would get it festival. These were very strategic decisions, which is why to bring it back to the institutional barriers that make it difficult for an unknown actress who get this movie. Like, the problem is that you until you can't cast, you know, an Uzo Aduba and get this at the time, and couldn't get this made when they were doing it. Like, the other thing that is like, when you have an icon like this in your community, like for us, right? Particularly in this conversation, we're all Puerto Rican, right? You know that every Puerto Rican filmmaker has an Albizu Campos script on their hard drive. Has a Lolita. Everybody's trying to write the Lolita Lebron story.
Roberto Clemente.
Yeah, we got. Just because a Hector Lavoe movie has been made doesn't mean there aren't 50
other scripts
out there, right? So we can. So just to show that we can relate to African Americans' frustrations, because there are 1,001 Nina biopics,
right,
written by Black people, Black women, or Black women directors who are out there submitting these to competitions,
right?
Producers, and they can't get their shit made. And these white folks were able to get their thing made.
She's Latina. The writer is a Latina.
Is she?
That's what I've read. I don't have any confirmation. I haven't seen like where she's from or what, but I've read that she's Latina. Which is also one thing. This does sort of make me think back to Frida, At the time that Frida was being made by Salma Hayek, if memory serves, there was also another Frida that was a J-Lo project. And what happened to that, I don't know. But I remember reading at the time that there were these sort of two competing projects and what was going to happen to them, right? So, but what it makes me think in terms of what you're saying, Sophia, is, you know, and here's where I'm going to probably shoot myself in the foot, right? Can we only tell our own story? You know, I love Nina Simone. What if I wanted to tell a Nina Simone story, right? Am I barred from that because I'm not African American? Am I barred from that because I'm not, you know, whatever? I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? So there's sort of like, I also am uncomfortable saying, oh, you're not of that. You can't tell that story. That's not your story to tell. But I think, unfortunately, for people of color, we've grown, or not that we've grown, maybe by coercion and force, we are constantly having our story told by other people. So I think now people are feeling like, hold up, we're tired of our story being told by other people, and we need to start telling our own stories, right? That's also a movement, but
it's getting ridiculous.
It is. Yeah. I mean,
I think yes, it's very difficult, and and I think all of us, because we're creatives, we can, you know, this tension is something that we live with all the time. The stories that we want to be told. I experience this a lot as a young adult novelist when I see white writers wanting to write people of color, like, you know, and it's difficult because I've seen it well done, and I more often than not really fucked up. And know that there's limited opportunity. My thing is this, and it was my friend, who's another young adult named Zetta Elliott, who articulated really well for me because I couldn't. She says, you know, we're not going to sit here and say you cannot tell the stories that you want to tell, but when you do want to tell a story that is outside of your experience, then you need to be mindful about the privilege that you have. So if you're a white person writing these books, then you have to understand that your white privilege is allowing you to do that because you are stepping in a space where the opportunities are not plentiful. And you, right, just the fact that you're white outside of an experience, or you're straight outside of outside of a trans experience, whatever, you're a man outside of a woman's experience. You have to recognize that you're stepping into that space. You're coming. Your privilege is coming to that project, and you have to always be mindful of that, and that you are being given a credibility. Yet, even though you're like, because I just think what happens. I think what happened. Remember back in the early thousands, when there was this real spate of a lot of Latino flicks being made by white folk. Manito, Raising Victor Vargas, Maria Full of Grace, of these independent movies with Latino casts that were not being created by Latinos. And what those folks have to, you know, and then it was really, and what was really challenging for me at that time was that, you know, they were doing doing a relatively good job.
Yeah.
You just took the words right out of my mouth.
We were making Empire Redux.
And you know why? There's a reason for that.
That was very difficult for me. But I'm like, but I also know that there is a Latino who has a Raising Victor Vargas type quality script and and is not getting the chance. There is someone who, you know, like, it's not that people of color can't do these things, but white folks, because of the virtue in part, not only of their talent, I don't want to take away from their talent, but it's not just their talent, by virtue of their whiteness, opportunities. Because I think what's happening is, my theory is that when the people who make the decisions, who put the money in and green light these things, who make it possible, I think on an unconscious level, they're making a process, undergoing a decision-making process where they're thinking, if this white person, or this person who is out, let me just say, because it's not really just about race, because it happens across gender, and if this person who is outside of this experience wants to tell this story, then clearly they have tapped into the humanity of that story. When want to tell our own stories, then it becomes, then this is niche. If a Latino story, I'm saying this is the way they think.
I know.
Story, then nobody but Latinos are gonna see it, and how are we gonna make our money?
But they're not that far. That's not too far from the truth, honestly, because I had this conversation with Marilyn Torres when we did the show Soul Latina. Mm-hmm. It was such a great conversation, and I remember Marilyn saying, we keep telling the same story because we're never allowed to tell the story.
Right.
Now,
right.
With that in mind, because I believe the way I think is in a very spiritual way, and it's all about evolution and time. And a group of people we're all pretty much on the same journey. So we haven't been able to really let it all out so that we can evolve in our storytelling. Mm-hmm. We are still talking about Vicks, chanclas. I keep saying this over and over again. It's like, okay, this is all we find funny. And sometimes I can relate and sometimes I can't. I cannot relate sometimes to that kid, LeJuan James, when he's all...
Uh-oh. Are you okay?
Yes.
Give her a moment.
Okay, yeah.
We gotta let her finish her thought.
Yeah.
While she's gone, I can just acknowledge some of the comments that we're getting on the side.
Yep.
Alexi, welcome. Dan Stark, welcome. And Events by Fort says, I don't think we are barred, but meaning people telling stories that are outside of the community that they identify with. I don't think we are barred, but whoever tells it, there has to be some responsibility. And she says a good example is Hoop Dreams. Right. It's like you have to understand that you're coming to this project with a privilege. Your privilege is allowing you to tell this project, and therefore you need to be responsible in your storytelling. And you also need to recognize that there might be other people from that experience who want to tell that story.
Right. Well, that's what happened recently with the film Stonewall, right? There was huge backlash because the film didn't recognize the Black and Latino people in the LGBT community were part of that struggle, were at the forefront of that struggle, that trans women were at the forefront of that struggle, right? So, here you have a film about a marginalized community that put, a white American male at the center of a story that was really about, working class people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds and gender backgrounds.
Sylvia Rivera, right? They just totally centered the women of color, and this is history. Again,
right.
This is where you take creative license too far. You didn't need to do that.
Yep.
But this is where we got to again bring it back to infrastructure, bring it back to structural barriers. Because would that thing ever had shot one day of filming if it did not center a white character?
You're right, and that's the structure that we're fighting against.
For the Miles Davis biopic, he says, "I was not going to get this movie made until the white guy in the trailers is as prominent as he is a co-lead. Just don't need no co-lead."
No, it's true, and it's sad.
Male co-lead love interest. So the license goes too damn far. When people want to use, and that's privilege. You're hiding behind your privilege to use your to argue creative license around why you're making messing with facts that don't need to be messed with. That is not the place for your poetic license. There's other places. You want to make this shot. You want to condense these characters. You want to add this scene, leave out that scene. That's where, because it helps stay true to the. So the whole point is that it's not about. You don't have to stay true to the facts. You have to stay true to the emotional truth.
Right. Right.
That in making these choices where you're erasing Marsha Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, and you're concocting a relationship with Nina Simone and her manager that didn't exist.
Right. That's.
You are not staying with the emotional truth. That is some other shit that you are trying to do. If you're gonna do it, if you're that much of the artist, you want to stand by your creative license, then at least own that. This relationship between her and her manager, because I wanted it to be juicy and we needed romance. We don't want to focus on her relationship with her husband, and
right. Or even her relationship with herself. You know, at the center of Nina's story is the relationship with herself, with her identity, with how she grew up, with the things that she confronted as a Black woman in her time. You know, that is the story, right? Everything else is sort of on the periphery, but that is her story. And so to do a biopic where you don't, you know, acknowledge that those that, you know, yes, we know she has demons, but where those demons came from, it's not fair to her legacy, I think, you know, and that is also, I think, why many people are angry, because yes, you know, you want to show the demons, okay, because there's a level of truth in that, and we don't want to do a Disney fairy tale about Nina Simone's life, but you know, you completely, or it seems at least from the trailer, that what led up to all of that is just completely erased, right? So I you know, I don't know. I don't know. Hey, Lynn, are you okay?
Attack.
Oh my God, was it like asthma or?
I couldn't breathe. It was weird. Anyway, I'm good.
All right.
So you got the floor again, Linda, so you could finish your point.
Oh God, no, I can't right now.
Oh no, Dito. Okay.
You were getting up to make a really powerful point.
Remind me.
We were
LeJean James is the last thing I heard. Oh, I remember. I mean, oh, it was the evolution of a people and the stories. There's not much more to say. Just that, you know, I just think if we're gonna keep repeating ourselves until we say it loud, you know, and we're not given that opportunity to evolve from there, so that when we do concentrate on a story, it's not those things that are more important in the story. It's more the universal themes that are important, and you can't get there without making those mistakes or not making mistakes. It's important to tell different parts of the story. Or the journey. Sorry. I'm like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Poor thing. Did you get some water? Okay. Oh.
I think it's so funny because we started this conversation wondering if there was anything more that needed to be said, but I think we actually covered some ground that that doesn't get discussed. Like, so Linda, when you had to step out, talking about, you know, being honest about what you're using your creative license for, that if you are a person outside of an experience and you want to tell the story, that number one, you have a responsibility, right? Because you have to recognize that your privilege is enabling you to tell the story, because there are probably other people from that community who want to, but you're being given and so that you should take that responsibility seriously, and that you should be also very honest about how you're using your creative license. So we were and Siri brought up as a great example because the Stonewall movie completely erased the women of color who, these are facts. These are not about a historical movie, about real events, about a movement, and they centered a white man, right? And Don Cheadle and his Miles Davis.
Right.
Look at that. The white guy's a Coley. This is Miles Davis. No fucking Coley. Nina Simone, romantic relationship. She is interesting, compelling, dramatic, cinematic, without having you to fake this relationship with her manager that didn't really exist. So there's this whole thing about, you know, you're gonna hide your privilege behind your poetic license. Be real. We'll respect, because you've been talking a lot about how we need to allow for, hey, these are crafts. You know, we're talking about crafts, creativity. It's very difficult to try to police creativity. But what's happening is that people are hiding behind their privilege to do some really jacked up stuff in their poetic life.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Mm-hmm.
to stay true to the emotionality of the story.
I think part of the sorry,
Sylvia, to tell the, you know, to stay true to the emotion.
But they don't know they're doing it either. You know, they don't know they're doing it, but we have to make them aware that they're doing it.
Right.
And that,
right.
And that's why they if they're really about it and they're really about, I want to use my privilege to tell the story because it might not get told otherwise. Well,
it's like this movie with the Egyptians.
Say that again.
Oh, Gods of War.
Yeah. Like, you better not do it again.
Well, you know what happens too is that I think, you know, with something like Gods of War, I was doing a little bit of research because I was very curious about this, but that also has to do with how history is told and how many historians actually believe that the people in Egypt were not Black and were not even Arabic or, you know, of that, you know, of the people of that region, right? So you have, right, you know, totally, you know, but you have people, you know, something like that can get justified because then they can look at history books and say, well, look at, you know, this is how we envision Cleopatra. This is how we envision the people of that time, you know, and so it's like a revisionist history, right? And they feel justified in making those choices because our history is so screwed up that it supports that nonsense, you know.
That's why pop culture matters. This is why these images matter. Because
right.
Keep perpetuating.
Right.
Watch the Heston movie and thinks Egyptians are white.
Yeah. Even with that Moses story, the one that came out with Christian Bale.
Why these images matter and why pop culture matters. Because people are taking the entertainment and from them. This is
what's interesting to me.
I know I'm preaching to the converted, but I'm saying this for listeners who might not buy it. This is why entertainment is inherently political. This is why this shit matters. This is why the three of us about this stuff.
I think, you know, something that oh man, something that for me is important too is that there isn't enough, even hiring someone on the project who can help with that. There was I can't remember the film right now, but there was a film recently where all the Native Americans on the film walked off because that Adam Sandler project, because they didn't like how the Native American, like how it was playing out with their characters. And that to me was huge. Right? It was huge to take that risk to say, you know what, we're not going to fuck with this project anymore because you're not listening to us when we're telling you that this is not how you tell this story or that this is not true to what this experience was or who these people are. And there isn't enough, number one, there isn't enough of that. There's a lot of people just accepting the project as is and maybe happy to just be working, you know? And number two, I feel like there isn't enough consultation of someone saying, all right, you know what? I want to write this story, but I'm not an expert in this. Can I bring someone on who's going to help me bring, you know, some authenticity, some truth, some realness to this story that will help me tell it better. Right? Because I can't argue, you know, I don't know enough. I can't argue that, and I'm forgetting her name right now, the writer-director of Nina. She might love Nina Simone, and maybe she feels really passionate about why she wants to tell this story. But that's why I'm just so torn about the fact that she didn't reach out to the family. Like, look, I want to tell this story, but I also want to tell it, you know, as honestly as possible. Can you help me? Be true to Nina's legacy or be true to who she was in her time, you know, and I think it is a privilege thing. I think it's feeling entitled to tell a story without consulting anybody who might have known anything and maybe looking up a couple of articles and saying, okay, I now have enough background information to do this.
I think that's about avoiding the gut check, right?
Yeah.
Because that you're wedded, that you want to do. There's certain things that you want to say. There's certain things that you want to portray, and you don't want anybody coming along and gut checking you. And then, if you don't want anybody coming along and gut checking you, then you need to take a step back and really examine your motives for wanting to tell that story.
Please comment out loud.
What's that?
Events by Forte. She wrote a great thing here.
I always find it interesting that people will go to great lengths to consult how to design sets, wardrobes, etc., that speak to the time frame of the story, but not
the actual people.
Yes.
It's a classic. It's exactly right. She's exactly right.
Because like what you brought up about the Adam Sandler film, because that also speaks to, wow, you know, if there's any group of people that are really marginalized, misrepresented, don't get opportunities, or not see, you know, are Native American communities, and then you see people organize and walk off a set, that kind of begs the question, then why can't someone who is not struggling for the check, not struggling for opportunities, can't do the right thing and walk away from a project and say no? So I gotta play that, but with that, again, that's a whole other conversation, and it's already 5, and we got other things that we want to get. Always keep on, because you know what, the movie, you know, comes out in April, and I have a feeling more stuff is going to come up, especially when as it's doing its little festival and people start to actually see it. Start to do previews of it and whatever. You know, so maybe we do want to revisit this next month, because it'll be right, I think, the same weekend that it's released. And because the question I want to pose for us to think about, we can't talk about it now because I really want to move on to Kim K. Questions. So we, as Latinos who want to be in solidarity with African Americans, telling their story, having their stories told to them, what does solidarity look like here? Being that there has been some stuff that hasn't been really cool towards Zoe because she's Latina, but at the same time recognizing the real legitimate and valid criticisms here. What does solidarity look like? Stay home? Do we watch it and critique it? But what does that look like? Maybe that's for next time. But now let's talk Kim K, who, you know, got pushback for. It wasn't really the pushback for her selfie. It became a conversation because of other people's responses to her. So she posted. Right. It's not her first time posting a nude selfie. And Bette Midler cracks. You know, if Kim Kardashian wants us to see any aspect of her that we haven't seen already, she's gonna have to follow the camera. And I'm quoting someone on Twitter who goes by @fem_ESQ Esquire. She said she felt that was a clean hit. She said people critiqued Kim and they were body shaming her and they were slut shaming her, but she felt, and I agree, that what Bette Midler said was a clean hit. She wasn't calling out her. She didn't say anything about her body. She didn't say anything about her sex. She was calling out her narcissism. And also, now Chloe Grace Moretz's comment kind of was on the borderline, because I understand what she was trying to get at, which was that we need to show young women that there's more to being a woman than your body. Maybe the way she worded it could have been perceived. I didn't take it that way, because, and maybe my bias is because I agree with her, what she was trying to say. So maybe I see the body shaming and the slut shaming in it. I agree with her point, but maybe there was a way that she said it that went in a direction that should. My big thing is, and this is why I linked Kim K to what happened with Zendaya. I hope I'm pronouncing it. Because Julie Klausner comes and body shames Zendaya, and Zendaya hadn't even put herself out there as trying to tell girls, you need to be as thin as me. I kind of felt like that's a dirty hit. This is more woke than you. So I don't know why you try, but there is a habit of white women, especially in the comic world, you know, trying to get their feminist bones by coming for Black women. So I think the person needs to take a seat. And I feel that you can defend Kim Kardashian against body shaming and slut shaming without making her a feminist icon, because her picture was with a feminist impulse.
Right.
I just felt it was just her usual self-promoting. She's got the right to do it. Revolutionary. Because for someone that she didn't have shit to say when her own husband was slut shaming his ex-girlfriend.
And Amber, I'll take Amber over Kim K any day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so a couple of things. I've had this issue with feminism since I began to identify as a feminist, which is specifically about the sexual revolution and about sexuality as a way to push the feminist agenda forward. I'm very torn on those issues. I have my own views, but I realize also that for some women, taking control of their sexuality in this way for them is a feminist act. And there are people who, there are things that can support it. It's not necessarily my view, but it's a view, right? So I try to be very careful in policing women who choose to use sexuality as a feminist act, as a way to empower themselves. Because it's hard. Now, I think what would have been interesting is if there would have been no commentary about Kim K, because quite frankly, I just think that she's an exhibitionist and she's attention seeking. And this is who she is. And when we try to politicize her behavior, it doesn't have the effect that we want it to, because really then it just becomes about drawing more attention to someone with attention-seeking behavior versus looking at the real issues, about sexuality and all the other things that come along with that. So my issue was not so much with Kim K, it was more so with all the people who came out. I mean, even Pink, who I like a lot, wrote this long thing, and it's just like, listen, man, we are, we need to move away from, and I understand people who are in the public eye, I think do have some responsibility for their image and some responsibility for, how people perceive them. However, when we're talking about the education of our young girls, no, Kim K, you are not in control of that. You're not going to tell or I'm not going to make you responsible for being the model for my 10-year-old niece about the type of woman that she's going to be or who she wants to be and so forth. I'm not going to put that pressure on you and tell you that you have to behave a certain way because my 10-year-old niece might be looking at you.
And then you take it over? We're talking about a woman who wouldn't even protect her own sister from this 25-year-old guy.
Right. So I think we need to pull back a little bit on that and stop giving, people like this the responsibility for raising our kids. That's not, I may find your image distasteful. I may not like it, but I'm not going to tell you that by putting this up, you are now giving information to sorry. Like, I'm just over that shit. And I think that I think young girls, I do believe that young girls are struggling with body shaming and body image and all of these things. And I think that we do need to have conversations about this. But we have to have conversations about this. And that's not something that starts when Kim K puts out a picture. That's something that really, it should be starting as you're raising the child from their toddler days, right? That's not something that starts at 15 when this picture's already out. You know how many messages they've already received by that point? I mean, give me a break, So, that's where I'm taking some of the issue with the pushback that Kim K got on the photo.
Well, I remember a few years ago on Facebook, there was a thread. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it had to do with J-Lo. It was about 5 years ago. And a girl I don't remember who it was, had posted that Kim K was a big role model for Latinas because of her body. Now, wait a minute. It makes sense. I do not care for that entire family, but there was a time that you didn't see girls like Kim K. And Latinas are always gravitating to those people that have, you know, that they can relate to. You know, she's big ass, you know, she dark features. She seemed very Latina, and she became a role model for a lot of young women. That was before she started with all this nonsense of, you know, she changed her. She's done a lot to her face. She's done a lot to her body. People need to know that the entire family, maybe with the exception of Kendall, have altered their bodies and their faces. But I think she became a monster. You know, and I think people were feeding the wrong thing to her, and now she's become this, you know, and she can't do this forever. But the point is, she did start out as a role model, and it became this, and now it's become about her. And that is all, you know. Again, the evolution of things that happen. It's like it started out with one intention. And, you know, you have to understand that when she came out, everybody thought she was beautiful. And there was something very natural and something that people gravitated toward. Even I, you know, when I first saw her, I thought she was very attractive. And it became this whole Kardashian clan thing and this, you know, reality show. It became ridiculous. It became a circus. But it didn't start that way.
Right.
Let me ask you guys this. Because I know that there's some folks who would argue that it really doesn't matter if we call it feminism or not, right? It doesn't really matter if Kim says that she's a feminist. It doesn't really matter if what matters is in the action and what a person is doing.
Message.
There's a way that makes total sense to me because my mother did very feminist things, you know. I would not be able to be where I am today, and would never identify as a feminist. So it's really doing and what's happening on the ground and how people live. People can live very feminist lives and make feminist choices, because and never call themselves feminists. Right. So it doesn't matter if people claim it. You know how we talk about Zoe? Does it matter if she calls herself Black? You know, does it matter if Kim says I am a feminist? On the other hand, and I think this is like another example, like a kind of series where you were talking about some of the struggle that you have about the role that sexuality plays as a feminist, as a liberating act. Right? And I think it goes the same of, well, even defining what feminism is and what feminism isn't. Like, okay, I'm very well aware that there's more than one type of feminism. There's no feminism, there's feminisms. And there's some feminisms that don't bode well for me as a woman of color. Ride with those and whatever, but that doesn't make them less about the gender liberation of women and people who identify as women. Some is very transphobic and whatever, so that would even be. I do struggle with this. I understand why that feminism needs to have a big tent, but I do struggle with there not being any walls, right? Because if anybody can say I'm going to do this and I'm doing this and it's a feminist act, and we are not allowed to debate that, question that, critique that, then it's not going to mean anything. I feel, for right or for wrong, that you know, we like, it's almost like we need to, like, you know, there has to be lines drawn. Right. You can't just say, well, I'm a woman and I want to do this, and therefore, as a woman doing this, this is feminist. Right. Because not all women are for women. So, and not all acts. That's what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling there has to be. But I don't have a problem with, let's have a conversation about what they should be, but there have to be boundaries. Because otherwise it doesn't mean anything.
I don't think it can have boundaries.
Say that.
I don't think it can have boundaries.
The problem
with boundaries is that we go back to where we started.
Right.
And telling people they need to do this in order to be this.
It becomes patriarchy.
I think it really is about message and intent. You see the message and intent with Kim K. You see it's empty, it's shallow. There is nothing there. Also giving you, she's hiding her real body most of the time, because I have seen Amber's cellulite. Amber has cellulite. Not afraid to show it.
And that's feminist.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing that, so, you know, I don't think that Kim Kardashian, at least I've never heard her call herself a feminist.
No, she hasn't.
I've never, when she posts these images, I don't think that she posts them necessarily with a feminist intent. Although she did speak out after she got some of the criticism, she did speak out and talk about the fact that she thinks that it's important for women to love their bodies, whatever they look like. Okay. But it was after the fact. It was after the criticism. So, you know, the problem with boundaries is that I find that with the boundaries tend to come patriarchy. And I'll explain why. When we start telling women, oh, you can be a feminist, but you have to be this type of feminist. Well, where does that type really come from, right? And is it really feminist if it's in support of patriarchy? We can call it that because a woman is, you know, doing it, or she says it's for other women. But if the act itself is oppressing other women, then, you know, is that really feminism? I don't know, which is why I try to stay away from the conversations where I start policing what other women are doing with their bodies. Now, I was in conversation with someone who said something extremely interesting to me. We were talking about, I want to say it was stripping or something like that. You know, and I'm kind of like, I'm not going to tell an exotic dancer or a stripper what to do with her body. She's probably paying her rent more on time than I am. Okay. You know, but what she did say to me that was very interesting, that culture, that lifestyle endangers her, right? Because it facilitates a certain type of patriarchy that means that men continue to have some control over or some dominance over the female body. Right. That then, you know, goes in these. And so it was a really interesting perspective that I hadn't really given much thought to, you know. Now, you know, we could talk about that some more. And I think that, you know, but it was really interesting. But it also made me think, wow, she and I have very different ideas about this, but we both consider ourselves people who are for the empowerment of women. Right. So how do we negotiate, you know, both of those viewpoints in the effort to move women forward, or the effort to, you know, to progress women in this way, right? I get it. I get that women want to have rights over their body. I get that women want to feel free and not controlled by the male gaze and not controlled by, you know, men in general. But sex and sexuality still seems to be the place where those lines get blurred, right? Beyonce calls herself a feminist, but Beyonce, your video, Who Runs the World Girls, you and all your dancers were in lingerie. So I don't know who runs the world now, right? Because who is the lingerie for? I do not know. You know, we you know what I'm saying? So like, you know, so message and intent becomes important too when women are calling themselves feminist or not feminist. I know that Amber Rose has also been criticized for her slut walk, and what she's trying to do is, you know, at least from what she's said that I understand, you know, is put the idea of slut shaming on the table for us to discuss. Why are we doing that when women are making choices, right? Women are making choices about their sexuality, and now we're calling their sexuality or that choice slut or slut behavior or slut-ish, right? And that's a patriarchal idea that we're going to tell a woman, oh, if you choose to do this with your body, then you are now a slut or a whore or a thot or whatever the words are, right? So on some level, what Amber Rose is doing can be considered revolutionary because she's bringing attention to this language that women also are using to shame and devalue other women, even though, anyway. So those are that's where it gets complicated for me.
That's very interesting, and it is very complicated. But I also think it's a lot of bullshit too.
Yeah.
Because this whole showing your body thing, being that I'm older now, to me, I guess it's still it's a big thing for someone who's maybe 18 to nearing maybe 50, like J-Lo. When you have something still that there's a lot of it's hypocritical. I don't know. It's not. There's a lot of bullshit here because what happens to an older woman? There was a series of pictures online that I saw. I think it was Huffington Post. A photographer took sexy pictures of women over 50, and they were in their 60s, and I think there was one that was 70. And it's almost the reaction you get when you look at the Zoe trailer. You're not used to seeing,
right?
That's not what it's supposed to look like, but that's how you're trained. So you keep an open mind and you go, so I don't know if any of this means anything. You know what I'm saying? It's sometimes it just doesn't. Is it a lot of young, good-looking girls just saying these, creating this? There's real feminism, but I don't think it's all of that. What Amber and Kim K and half the people on Instagram are shoving in your face. I don't want to know. There's a girl on my she's very attractive. She's an actress. Suddenly she wants to take her clothes off. She's been taking off clothes and showing more and more and more. And I'm like, do I leave you on my feed? Because now you're making me uncomfortable. Or should I just let you? So now I'm liking less of her and ignoring her a little bit. I don't know. I'm confused about that too. Well, this put me in a I have to check myself. Is it me?
I know for me for years, and this hasn't changed. I still change. I still struggle with it. It's always bugged me when you have like a young Disney actress, right?
Yeah.
Child actress on Nickelodeon, Disney, what have you. And the first thing that they want to do to break out of being seen as a child is almost always sexually.
Yep.
And I think this is what Chloe Grace Moritz was trying to say when she responded to Kim K selfie. I think this is what she was trying to say, even if she didn't use the best language and maybe the shaming and implied in it or whatever. There's a lot more to being a woman than your sex life. You told me you grown. It's not to be sexy. Be whatever. You got curves you didn't have now, but enjoy them and flaunt them. That's fine. But being a woman is not solely going. You're not. The difference between being a girl and a woman is not just your sexual desire, sexual activity. It's not just your sexual availability. It's towards, hey, you can fuck me now. I'm fucking now. Like that's how it kind of comes off.
Yeah.
Without going to jail.
Yeah.
People want to know. Now that you're grown, where do you stand on immigration? Where do you stand on,
half the time.
Show me your growth in your artistry. But the artist, like now, you're not doing any more bubblegum albums. There's a way to show your maturation and your evolution as a woman and as an artist, in addition to doing grown folk sexy music. I'm fucking now music.
But
So I'm not saying that they're wrong for doing that. I'm just saying I struggle because that's all I see when they're trying to go.
But I think that
that's more to being a woman than your sex.
I think though that unfortunately that's been ongoing, you know, that sexuality is something that's associated with adulthood. You know, I think it's in the way that we teach young kids about sex. You know, the fact that health ed, most schools in most counties, the parents do not want sex ed being taught any earlier than high school. And it took a fight to even get it into high schools, right? So we're teaching children that sex and sexuality is something that is specifically relegated to adulthood, right? And I think that's because people don't know how to teach about sex and sexuality to children without sexualizing the children. That's the fear, that you're going to sexualize the children when you teach them about these things as a young person, right? So we've been in that cycle, I think, for eons, I feel like. And, you know, I don't know how to break out of it. And I see that too. I mean, we saw it with Miley Cyrus, her entire first, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years out of the Disney hub, you know, and into her own self, take on that sexuality as a way to liberate herself. And then here's the conflict. It is liberating, right? To be able to say, you do not control my body anymore. However, you know, is that the only way, right? Is nakedness the only way? You know, I hope not. I don't know. And the thing is that there's definitely enough role models out there, right? There's definitely enough women out there to give another, you know, I could think of 20 women that can give you a different model than Kim K, right? For every Kim K, there's another God knows how many women who are doing something else, right? But we also live now with social media and with Instagram. We also live in an all eyes on me society.
And people are being rewarded for their
for their
so
right.
A girl that,
you know,
I mean, I've seen it
yes.
where they're being invited to these HBO events because they have a million followers on Instagram.
Just looking at their behind. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it is. And it's difficult.
It's very important. You know, Events by Forte is reminding us that how racialized this conversation is too, because she's saying, no, because about women of color sexuality. Miley, Kim, and them are only liberated to mimic their understanding of sexuality as it relates to women of color. They get liberated based on our oppression in some way. Wow. Because Miley is liberated, but Beyonce is policed. There is a conversation about what you're doing up there. You know, J-Lo is you are mama now. Don't be twerking up there with. I mean, my issue was because she was with Iggy Azalea and she gave Iggy Azalea visibility. I had a problem with her, and she brought her back. That was my issue. And also, again, like you were bringing up, Linda, like, let's talk about, you know, ageism works in here. You know, because let me tell you, Bette Midler, like, again, I said, I thought hers was a clean hit. I don't feel that her critique of Kim had nothing to do with her body or her sex life. It was about her narcissism. And Kim K's reaction to her was extremely ageist. And her Chloe was extremely classist. Like, yeah, I'm, you know, well, I got money and I got whatever. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's how I know that this selfie, it was nothing feminist about it. This was all about you just wanting people to look at you.
Well, Sharon Osbourne,
you know,
but I didn't see the picture.
But women of color do these same things. See, this is why, I mean, the whole slut walk thing. I'm glad that you brought that up, Siri, because slut walk didn't have the same gravitational pull to a lot of Black women in particular. Color, because our relationship to the word is very, very different. But, you know, we get called a slut right before we get killed. Right? So you know, and also our sexuality always having to be something that we don't have any say about who has access to it or not. So we're sluts, we're fucking or not. We're fast when we're 12. So it's there again. There's privileges in this conversation that doesn't make this question of liberation have every woman on the same footing.
Well, and
Black women that didn't want to fuck with slut walk, they don't know who's doing it because they're like, yeah, my relationship to this word is different than yours. Yeah. This is something. Go ahead, Becky. I'm not. Don't fight me. You're no boy. You know. And
I find it interesting though that. See, who are they taking their clothes off for? Who are they buying those high heel shoes for? Because I haven't seen a lesbian take her clothes off the way Kim K takes her clothes off and parades on Instagram. There isn't a lesbian Kim K out there. And I'm getting to something deeper here. Because who is the lesbian taking her clothes off for? I feel that there's they're being very hypocritical, a lot of women, when they do take their clothes off.
It's still the male gaze,
but part of it is just showing your ass. So you can show guys, right? And you don't want to believe it, and and I'm not saying it's everyone.
Let's be real, okay? Women are not. Women are still struggling with our own unity in a way that when a woman exposes herself in that way, she's not necessarily going to get the, oh, yes, girl, do that, girl. I'm glad you showed your body, girl. You look great, girl, right? She's still going to get a certain amount of resistance and pushback from other women who feel that she doesn't have to do that, right? There are very few men that are going to go on the Kim K thing and say, damn, girl, I really would have liked to see you with your clothes on. And that may be making a terrible judgment about men because, and I don't think it's all men that do that, but I do think that it is for the male gaze, which is why I question the feminism of certain types of sex and sexuality. Because if you're saying that I'm going to be this sexual person, but the reason that we are saying that is for the male gaze, then it's not feminist, right? It's still to me patriarchal because it still requires that men approve of your body and men approve of your sexuality, and that's problematic. Yeah,
which is why it's in a certain age range. That's what I'm trying to get at. It is a certain age range. You're going to find this.
This whole conversation. Every time I try, I grapple with the whole thing of slut shaming and is this really feminist? Because I feel like anything can be fair game. It really is about intention. And I guess when I see a very young woman who's still figuring herself out do certain things. And maybe I shouldn't. I don't mean to police, but maybe I shouldn't question whether she's what her intention is. It's hard for me. This is where I struggle. And I try to think about what I was like when I was a teenager, starting to develop. First of all, I remember being only 11 and 12 and having grown men say things.
Yeah, I just saw that.
And, but I also remember, so I'm gonna put. I think it's very important, like some aspect of to just explore our own experience and tell our own stories to help us figure this out. Because we have a lot of this conversation. Because how Siri, you were saying that our unity may not be ain't at the levels it needs to be, but so is our own understanding and relationship of our own bodies. Individuals about ourselves. Physically and our sexuality and our sexual experience, because all I know is that when I really was being uncomfortable with the whole idea of like, Dika, what's this slut shaming? Like, don't you want to be perceived a certain way? Don't you want to be respected? But I kept trying it on because I didn't want to be that older feminist that was shutting down, and whatever. And what helped me start to shift a little bit, I'm not even saying I'm still there, I'm still grappling with it, but what opened it up for me was trying to look back at my own experience. I remember being 15 years old, 16 years old, and walking around with my tight spandex dress, because this was the 80s. Madonna, remember the cutouts on the side, the dress. And I remember I wasn't doing shit. I hadn't even kissed nobody. I wasn't even trying to kiss. I wasn't trying to. I mean, I had my crushes. I had my hormones were raging. I wanted to be doing things, certain things. I didn't want to be doing everything because some of it scared me. But I remember I dressed in a way that that would get me called a slut. Right? Meanwhile, I was a virgin. And some people, I wasn't trying to do anything. I was still very much in the mind that I'm going to meet this guy and I'm going to go to college and meet the man of my dreams and we're going to get married and he's going to be the only man I was still on that shit, but I wasn't dressing like that.
Yeah.
When you get the new body, you're trying to figure it out. And there's that you are doing certain things. And this is why I try to remember when I see the Miley Cyrus and I see the Selenas and the Demi Lovato's and I see the Disney girls trying to try on this woman. I'm like, well, you tried it on too. You tried to experiment it too. I'm trying to figure.
Oh no. Maybe her phone died.
Did her phone go
off? Yeah. Well, she'll probably get back on. Oh, there she is. She's already coming back. She's good.
There she is.
There's someone here asking, open to diametrically opposed and dissenting opinions. Events, right? That's Artists Inc. Thank you for joining us. Events by Forte also wrote, again, it's an intersection of race/gender. Slut and whore was what the white girl said. And then
that's
but we heard
something
puta.
That I heard a lot.
I don't know. And that was a really ugly term. Oh, okay.
Phone died.
Sorry, I'm just writing back. Maybe she's logging on the computer. So yeah, I think we should, because
you want to wind down.
It's 2:00.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me just let her know. I just want to make sure she's getting this. Because she might not get on. So I guess any final words, Linda?
All righty. No, this was a really great conversation, and there was a lot of great things said, and I still, it's good to know that we can have this conversation and not yet maybe resolve anything, but know that you're still struggling with, because I think it's part of your own identity too. And you have to give yourself that time to really understand it. And it's always great to talk to
No, I completely agree. I think that we could have this conversation from 5 years from now, and we would unpack other things, right? Because I think we're also bringing so much personal into this conversation within the context of everything that's going on historically and currently. But yeah, I think I love that we're not all on the same page. I love that, we have different levels of understanding in relationship to all the ideas that we discussed today. And I'm just grateful that we have this platform and this format to do it, and folks are joining us in that journey. Yeah.
Let's read what Sophia says. Okay, 52, to close my point, there's a natural trying on of the new body that we have to take into account in these young women's behavior.